Welcome back to HMO Sports. We are covering Week 11 quarterbacks. Let's run it. All right, so before we jump into Week 11 a little bit too quick, let's go back and look at Week 10. We actually did very well, around 78%. And listen, that's what we want to see. That's what's going to help us win leagues. So some of the hits, we got Justin Herbert. We said to bench him, and he did not perform very well. So that was a good sit. Justin Fields continues to go off, another 40-plus point game. And then Trevor Lawrence, he broke the threshold. We said to start him, so that was good. Misses, Matt Ryan, he just did not perform. Or I guess we did not predict he was even going to play, but he performed well despite that. And he's been named the starter. We'll cover that, though, in a little bit. Aaron Rodgers, it was his first week breaking that threshold, and hey, you're going to miss some. But Jimmy G, the reason I have him in the misses is because, listen, this is on me. I keep starting him, and he has yet to prove that he can actually break that threshold. Some of the close calls, so we got Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett, and Marcus Mariota, some of which helped us, some of which hurt us. With that, we're going to jump over into Week 10 buys, but before we cover the buys, once again, Mustache Movember. If you want to donate to the charity that helps men's health, look below and you will see a link. You'll see a website that you can donate to, and it will go to some charitable organizations that specify or that target men's health and try to help in those different scenarios, such as helping with depression, helping with cancers, what have you, right? Great cause, so look down below for that. Now jumping into Week 10 buys, we got the Dolphins, Seahawks, Buccaneers, and Jaguars. Some of these could kind of hurt you. Tua probably being the biggest hit if you have him in any of your leagues. Geno Smith has been all right option this year. Trevor Lawrence, Tom Brady are kind of hit and miss depending on the week. So those could hurt you. We're going to help you, though, and try to give you a good path towards replacing those guys if you need to for this week. Now let's jump into Thursday Night Football, where we got the Titans versus the Packers. Ryan Tannehill, Aaron Rodgers, I have them both benched because I think that they are two very similar teams, and here's why I think that they're similar. There's not that high octane of a team, tend to put up not great numbers. They're both running back dependent teams, whether that be even through the air or running. They both have underperformed this year. They don't have that great of a receiver core, and for these guys, I mean, they have rarely broken the threshold, but they actually happened to break it last week, both of them. Now, I don't think they're going to repeat that. I think that that's kind of the minority of them breaking the threshold, so I have them both sat. Now heading over into Sunday, where we got the Bears versus Falcons. Justin Fields continues to be a start. It's hard not to bench him at this point because in his last 5 games, he's broken that threshold every single game. And his last 2 games, he's totaled for 83 points, which is crazy. And now he's going against the Atlanta Falcons, who give up a lot of points. So that could be a very good game for him. He could have a heyday and just absolutely roll in the points. Atlanta, we got Marcus Mariota. I'm sitting him a little bit out of principle because I just don't think he's that great of quarterback. If you watch him against the Panthers, he made some awful decisions. And so I just don't see him. I don't see him producing very well. Now, when we look at the Chicago Bears, their defense against the Lions, they were putting on a lot of pressure, and that was against a pretty good offensive line. So I think Marcus Mariota is going to have some of those same struggles he had in Week 10. Heading over to Buffalo, where we got the Browns versus the Bills. Jacoby Brissett, he is 1 for 9, and now he's going against a tough Bills defense. Need I say more? Now let's add on top of that there could be some decently inclement weather as far as snow and some other scenarios that could kind of put him at a loss. Josh Allen, we got Buffalo. He's 100% of the year. I am going to start him. There's still the weather issues that we talked about, but I think that Buffalo is decently pass dependent, and even if they're not, Josh Allen is a very mobile quarterback, so he can still get his points. Now heading to Eagles versus Colts, we got Jalen Hurts in the start column. He's still able to perform even when things aren't clicking. That's what we saw in Week 10. We like to see that he's able to perform still. And I'm hoping this is going to be a good bounce-back game for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that it shouldn't be too bad because Indianapolis doesn't have that great of a defense. So should be a pretty easy bounce-back game. Indianapolis, on the other hand, they're going against a pretty good defense. So I've got Matt Ryan sat. He did well in Week 10. I don't think he's going to put up those same numbers, but he is fighting for a starting spot, and he's kind of fighting to keep out of retirement. So those two things could drive him to try to perform better. But when you're going against the number 2 defense against the quarterback who gives up around 11 points a game, that's not a good equation. Now we got the Jets versus Patriots. Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. Again, two teams and QBs who are similar in my mind. I have them both benched. I think the Jets, I think that listen, it's just a game of rough quarterbacks in this one. There's only been a couple good games from Zach Wilson so far. He was efficient against Buffalo, but there's not enough going on. He's not doing enough there. On the Patriots and Mac Jones, again, he's had a couple decent games, but he's only averaging 10.9 points per game, and there's just no real big plays happening. He can be efficient, but there needs to be more from them. Heading now to the Rams or Saints. Matthew Stafford, I have in the sack column. He just lost his biggest target, and he's been spying on Kupp the entire time, just constantly peppering him with pretty much every target. So that could be very detrimental for this first game where Kupp isn't involved. But it could force him to spread the ball, which could be good. But I also anticipate him just choosing another go-to receiver. Andy Dalton, another quarterback who's fighting for a starting role. He didn't do too well in Week 10, but I don't think any of the Saints quarterbacks are that great of options. So I have him in the bench column. Now, Lions versus Giants, Jared Goff, Daniel Jones. Both of these guys are typically underperformers, but could very well break that 90-point threshold. It kind of depends on how the game goes. If Detroit Lions decide to have one of their high-scoring games, and Jared Goff's point value always goes up. And then if they have high-scoring games, then the Giants most likely do too, because the Lions' defense isn't very good. Now, I don't think they're going to have that high-scoring of a game. I do have Jared Goff as a fringe. He's finding Amon-Ra St. Brown, and even he's finding his tight ends, and things are going pretty good for them over there. The only thing I want to see more of, though, is I want to see Swift involved more in the pass game. They've kind of kept him on the reserves, and he hasn't been having the same production he did in the beginning of the season. On the Giants side, they're just finding a lot of success through Saquon and not doing too much with Daniel Jones, and I don't think Daniel Jones is that great of a quarterback in the first place. Carolina Panthers, I've got Baker Mayfield sat. He's one of these quarterbacks, and I'll cover there's a couple more that will be coming up, but he's one of these quarterbacks who I think could easily be benched at halftime and they throw in Sam Darnold or someone else. He does not have a secure role. He hasn't had a good season, and he just doesn't have that many offensive threats who he can pass to. So I've got him in the bench column. Lamar Jackson, he's making his points work for him on the legs in Week 10, and that could be the case here against the Panthers again in Week 11. And he could be getting some of these targets back from some of their health and injury concerns. So that's something that we like to see for Lamar, and maybe you can start putting up some of those early season numbers. But for right now, he's kind of a fringe for me. Commanders versus Texans, we got Taylor Heineke in the bench column. He's just not that consistent of an option. He can still put up some decent numbers. But again, he's one of these quarterbacks who can be swapped mid-game, considering the fact that Carson Wentz is now cleared to play. It just kind of depends on how they look. Houston, their defense is number 5 overall, so they're only allowing 13.7 points to opposing quarterbacks, so that could be a problem for Taylor Heineke. Davis Mills, I have him also in the bench column. He's only broken that threshold 1 of the 9 weeks, and he got 19.08 points on that one time, so he barely broke our threshold. He's had some terrible conversion rates, just the Houston Texans in general, on both third downs and getting those TDs when they're in the red zone. So they're not able to produce at those pivotal moments, and that makes it very hard to get those numbers. Now we got Raiders versus Broncos. Derek Carr and Russell Wilson I have in the bench column. With Vegas, you're losing Waller and Renfro to IR, so this could be a huge hit to Derek Carr over the next few weeks. And then let's add on that Denver, their defense is ranked number 1 against quarterback right now, giving up less than 11 points per game. And so I think it's just going to be a low-scoring game all around, which also would hurt the Broncos. So Russell Wilson sat. He's broken the threshold once, but it was against the Las Vegas Raiders, so he very well could do it again. But he is without Jerry Jeudy, and I mean, I guess the only upside is that it's going against the Raiders, a team that he has already proven himself against, but I don't see it happening again. Cowboys versus Vikings, got both these guys in the start column. Dak Prescott, he's had a good couple last games. He has 46 attempts in his last game, which, I mean, we like to see the attempts are there, and he's making the connections with CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz, who are both players who are capable of making big plays. Minnesota's defense also gives up over 19 points per game, so that just plays in his favor. Kirk Cousins, because I think the Cowboys are going to be able to get ahead on the scoreboard, I think that's going to force the Vikings to pass. So I think that they're going to have to, even though they're going against a good defense, they're going to have to be passing. I think that he can incorporate Justin Jefferson a little bit more, but he's hitting TJ Hawkinson, he's hitting Justin Jefferson, and again, two players who can easily make some decent plays. So I hope that because he's being forced to pass and that this could turn into a high-scoring game, that he can make the most of that and score above 19 points. Now we got the Bengals versus the Steelers. Joe Burrow, I have in the start column. Listen, he's had a decent season. He's averaging 22.5 points per game. Pittsburgh, they're number 27 overall against quarterback, giving up 19.5 points per game. And with Joe Burrow having the targets he has, it's hard not to score good points. And honestly, he should be scoring a lot more than he currently is. But man, his receiver core is pretty dang lethal. Pittsburgh Steelers, I have Kenny Pickett. Even though he had a good week 10, I have him in the sit column here. Because again, he's only broken the threshold once since he came off the bench, and it was by less than 0.1 points. So I don't like seeing that. Not consistent, and I need to see more out of him if I ever want to start him. He's averaging only 12.9 points per game, and now he's going against the number 3 defense against the quarterback with Cincinnati allowing just over 13 points. Heading over to Kansas City Chiefs versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, again, plug and play. He continues to be a solid option, so continue to keep him on your start column. Now we got the Chargers with Justin Herbert. We moved him away from the start column in Week 10, and it paid off for us. It was a good choice, and in his last few games, he just hasn't impressed. He hasn't been putting the same numbers he has last season, so I have him in the sit column. I think he's going to stay there for a little bit. But we'll see. We'll see if he can turn around, and if he does, then obviously we'll make our corrections and we'll put him back in the start column. Now we got the 49ers versus the Cardinals, and if you don't think I learned from my mistakes, you might be 100% correct because, look, I have Jimmy G back in the start column, even though he still hasn't proved that he can start. So he is a fringe start for me. I want to make that clear, and that's mainly just because he hasn't proven himself yet. But, man, with the targets he has there, he's got such great targets, both out of the backfield, tight end, receiver, all those. And now he's going against the Arizona Cardinals, who allow just shy of 20 points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So the equation is there. Now we'll see if it equals him breaking 19 points, but it should. Now Arizona, if Kyler Murray is good, if he's not too limited, then yes, I have him in the start column. If not, though, I'm keeping Colt McCoy in the sit column. I think Kyler has the ability to go through the air or on the ground. And, hey, you could have the return of Hollywood Brown in this week, which would just make that receiver core pretty lethal with DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown. That wraps us up. Hope you like, comment, subscribe. Send us messages on Twitter or on Instagram. We'll try to reply to you as quickly as possible. With trade deadline just right there across the fence, we got to start setting up our lineups so that we can win in our playoffs and win our championships, and that's what we're here for. So let us know if you have any questions, and we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability, and we'll try to guide you in the right direction. Just, again, give this page a like, specifically comment. If we're doing bad on our videos and on our predictions, then we will be paying out money because we like to put money where our mouth is. And that's me here. We'll catch you in Week 12. Signing off, though, for this week.